All right, looks like most everyone is here, so we'll get started with today's online demo for Lantek Manager software. For those of you just joining us, again, this is Kevin Must, the Marketing and Operations Assistant for Lantek USA. I would like to first thank everybody for joining us today for this online demo. Our presenter today will be Lantek USA Managing Director Adria Haynes. So to start off for today, we're going to take care of some housekeeping items. So with the large crowd online, we will keep everyone muted to avoid any echoes and background noise. That said, feel free to send any questions that you may have to us using the Q&A function on the bottom panel of the webinar that you see. In today's presentation will also be recorded, and we will send that out via email to everybody. So keep your eyes out. It'll likely go out tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then Monday. We'll also provide everybody with a link to that, so you can share that with any colleagues that you may have. As I mentioned, we will hold a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to use the Q&A section at the bottom of your webinar, and we'll go ahead and answer your questions once we wrap things up. If you have any specific questions regarding specific requirements for your company, feel free to contact us via phone or email after the webinar, and we can take those offline to address them. As you can see there, our email is info.usa@lanteksms.com, and our phone is 877-805-1028. All right, before we jump into our demo today, I'd like to introduce Lantek for those who may be a little unfamiliar with us. Here at Lantek, we have over 30 years of experience in CAD/CAM development and support, with 20 years of experience in MES and ERP development, support, and integration for metal fabricators. Over the past 4 years, we have been developing advanced analytical tools with a focus on utilizing the IIoT, or the Industrial Internet of Things, in the past 2. We have 20 offices in 14 countries, and Lantek currently supports over 98,000 users worldwide in 18 languages. With all this support and worldwide reach, we have over 100 OEM agreements, and we've installed over 350 MES, MRP, or ERP installations worldwide. So this extensive industry experience has allowed Lantek to understand the pains of manufacturers. The 5 pains that we hear most often are reduction of scrap, reduction of rework, quick and accurate quoting, detailed insights and analytics, and maintaining an up-to-the-minute schedule. Our studies have proven that our solutions have helped customers improve every day. On average, we help manufacturers increase material utilization by 8% and productivity by more than 25%. We've also achieved 99% quoting accuracy with a 30% reduction in inventory. So all this helps to provide over 40% more on-time deliveries to your end customers. So by providing all these different solutions and integrations for all aspects of your shop floor, it helps to create what we call an interoperable transparency. This way you can see what's happening across all departments in real time at any phase or process of the manufacturing production. So that wraps up my introduction for Lantek, and will lead us into our Lantek Manager demo. I would like to introduce our speaker today. Our guest is Adria Haynes, the Managing Director of Lantek USA. Adria brings us more than 25 years of manufacturing experience, with 20 years of software integration and the past 10 years as Managing Director for Lantek USA. So thanks for joining us today, Adria. I'm going to go ahead and pass things off for you so you can start the demo today.
Great, thanks, Kevin. I'll just go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, so like Kevin was explaining, this demo being about a manufacturing execution system, and I think it's worth a few minutes to discuss what that is. You're probably familiar with an ERP system, or the business management side, where production orders are tracked, accounting is done, human resources and other global level planning. And of course, you're probably very familiar with programming for 2D and 3D machine tools, lasers, plasmas, etc. In the middle of that, there's often an expanse that's not covered for our customers, and that is where Lantek Manager resides. Manager being a manufacturing execution system, it's different than having a bill of materials, whether it be in a spreadsheet or on a printed piece of paper coming from the ERP system to the workshop. And instead of maybe Kanban cards, on physically printed and set up throughout the shop, it gives you the visibility in an electronic form. And that digitalization, or that ability to execute your manufacturing process digitally and integrate to an ERP system and to the CAD/CAM programming side, is the unique offering that Lantek has. After 30 years of developing CAD/CAM nesting software, we have created this tool so that we can keep a digital thread between the CAD model and the ERP system, whether it's the ERP system that we make, Lantek Integra, or another of commercially available Global Shop, SAP, Epicor, any ERP system can be connected with Lantek Manager to Lantek Expert CAD/CAM. And what this allows the users to have is a digital thread between, like I said, a part that has 90 holes in it is going to take a lot more, or a lot different timing than a part with 4 holes in it. Knowing that geometry allows us to bring another level of accuracy and more granular detail to not just the manufacturing process, but the ERP as well, as we are bidirectionally integrated with those. So again, with the pains that we know that you're feeling, this product was developed out of an understanding of, CAD/CAM customers asking us, how can I bring this production data into the CAD/CAM system without retyping it, without putting in the material, the quantity, etc. So beyond that level, then the next process or problem that we had our customers encounter is, where is the part in the shop? Not to necessarily the level of sensors, but just having some level of visibility where the part is currently at in the process, or where it's at in the shop, and if it's going to be on time or not. Scheduling, I think we've all got our opinions of that. I mean, for one, once a schedule is created, printed, it's inaccurate. Unless it's something like a major assembly line that you're running, you're probably not meeting your goals with scheduling. Lantek takes the approach of having a plan, and that plan being very flexible and real time allows on-the-fly decision making that makes a schedule actually possible. And then there's the problem with inaccurate estimated times. So, if you're using an ERP system with a decimal inventory and somebody's defined the item, you're always guessing how long it's going to take to cut, how much bending is going to be required. Even if it's going to be a 1-person or a 2-person lift item, all of these things can come into the scheduling problem because the times are estimated or in a spreadsheet somewhere. So to improve on these things, what we want to look at today, and what Lantek Manager can bring, is that visualization of your work in process. It could be good or bad news, but you're at least going to be able to see the truth. Having a flexible planning system, being able to say, okay, I know that I can get this to my customer on time, or do I need to contact the customer ahead of time with some bad news? And then also using the Lantek CAD/CAM system for those post-processor drive times. So we're able to go through and actually see what the post-processor estimates it to be, and hopefully that's within 5% of the actual machine time. So I'm going to jump into actually the software here, and I'll just go ahead and share my screen. Okay, great. So Lantek Manager is a user-based system. Each user will have an individual login and login requirements that indicate their level of security with the system. Also, we can eliminate some of the screens that are unnecessary for specific users so that they don't have so many things going on. In this case, I have every screen enacted so I can kind of explain the different roles of each person. Our home screen is where you'll see things that are specific to you and your day, what you might have on your list of things to do for the day. And probably the next most used screen, or in the process of things, would be the 2D Jobs Planning tab. 2D Jobs Planning tab is where the production order information or the demand from the ERP system arrives within Lantek Manager. Here we're able to see the exact details of what is in the ERP system, a production order number, the item number or name, whether or not it's a what the machine tool is, what the material is as well, and then the thickness of that material and quantities required. We can also see different things such as the customer name, and you'll notice throughout the system these different traffic light indicators letting us know if we're on time or at risk. I've got these sorted by date, so the due date here, but you can see there's a quick access filter that shows you basically whether it's aluminum, mild steel, and breaking it down by material type, thickness, and machine tool. So you might be asking, how did this information get here? Well, Lantek works with your ERP vendor or your IT group to develop the background process. It's a very simple one-time setup, and you can control how often this information is brought over into Manager. The information is bidirectional, so we are able to send back the results of the manufacturing process to your ERP system, as well as things such as the sheets consumed and specific scrap generated. I'm going to go ahead and start with the 11th here. This is our next due item, and just show you how I can select, typical Windows clicking process here of selecting some parts, and I'm going to assign them to a new job. Now that process, again, may be done by the programmer, it may be done by a production planner. Then from a programming standpoint, we can go in and just click on the Nest button. The Nest button is going to automatically be integrated, of course, with Lantek Expert for the CAD/CAM nesting side and programming, but you can see that it's the flow of the interface. You're not having to start another project or another software application. That'll get that out there somehow. Okay, so I went ahead and clicked on our Do All button. This is something Lantek's pretty well known for, the ability to dial in your particular requirements based on your material type and your thickness and your machine tool. So very specific settings in rules that you can make, and Lantek will apply those rules. In this case, it's looking for remnants that it can use to eliminate additional scrap. It's going to go through and nest all of the parts, and then at the end it's going to ask me what we call the 20% questions, things that you may only want to change 20% of the time, but so that you don't have to go digging through any sort of menus, they pop up for you. Of course, these can be disabled as well. Now that we have our nest created, we can look at the different sheets that we're using. It looks like we were able to use 3 different remnants, which is good. We could spend all day on probably nesting, so I'm just going to go ahead and show you how it goes back out to the workshop. With one click, I can send every sheet of the job to the workshop and then have it release any unnested parts. So parts that did not fit on the amount of materials we have, or that for some reason I just didn't decide to have in my program. We can also automate the naming and saving of your CNC files and the directory to where those go. And at this point, we're finished. So we have all of our tooling, machining, and you'll see this big X means that this has been sent to the workshop. Once we're back into Manager, we close that window. Manager is here for you. And I think what we could do now is basically look and see what others using the system might see. If somebody wanted to look up this job or look for a particular part in this job, they would be able to get a quick view of the nest itself. Without having to start a CAD/CAM license or require any additional project or products. We can look at estimated times that are going to be required for this specific nest. We can look at how close we are to our deadline, and we can see, with and without the remnant, what amount of the sheet are we actually using, keeping in mind that those were on remnants already. Then the next probably most common place for our users is going to be in the workshop manager side of things. And this is where once all of those jobs are created and sent into production, users are able to go in and see not only where things are in process, but to find out what order they might want to do things in. In this case, we can click on our fiber laser, we could go to our water jet, and we have the same indicators here. So those 3 nests that we just made, those remnants are not at the location required for this machine. So we have these red light indicators letting us know that perhaps somebody with a forklift needs to go and bring those 3 remnants that we nested on to the machine tool. We can see any amount of things that are in process with their estimated times, and we can change the priority of these on the fly, assuming we have the right permissions. So for example, I may want this sheet of this nest all within job 41 to go next. There may be a hot part on there that I have to get. We also have the ability to take kind of an even higher level look at our workload monitoring. For example, on the press brake side or on the water jet side, I could go over and filter what I'm looking at to see, in general, what am I looking at as far as my deadlines and whether or not I'm going to be on time. This deadline, you'll see here, is yellow. It's an adjusted deadline because we've already exceeded our delivery date on some of these items. And so this is our new deadline that we've associated for ourselves just by going through and saying calculate the deadline. We can also get an idea of just a couple of pieces of, or a couple of nests that are going to be on this, or a couple of production orders, and see that those are going to take 47 minutes or to get to for our users. In the production tracking tab, you're able to see basically everything that's happening, every production order that's been brought in, whether it be in a job or on a machine tool. Our little indicator here tells us whether it's in the workshop, if it's in programming. Here we can see that this part, as part 7, is actively being welded. And that's based on the different tools that we have at the work center level for the operators to give feedback in real time. So they would be looking at something, an interface I'll show you similar to this. This is our workshop capture tool. In this case, we are looking at what would be used for non-cut operations. Oops, let me log in here. Non-2D cutting operations, so basically welding, bending, or any other piece part process. We can select who we are once we're out in the shop, allowing us to use the same licenses for multiple people. It's going to know that this is my work center and that these are the parts that I have to be working on. And I may have already been working on these, and this is the time that's been racked up while I've worked on them. So when I do this and say, okay, I validated that I've made these parts, I click on the All Made button in real life. It would be connected directly to the system, and that would go back in directly to the current status of our production orders in the main system. So as an operator, I can have a different interface that's much simpler to use, and I can keep track of the work that I'm doing, whether it be cutting a nest or cutting a tube or pipe, or actually bending, welding, and other non-cut processes. This process here, so then we can go into, again, like the workload monitoring. You could see the different machine tools that you have. And then I guess the question would become, okay, what if I'm looking for a specific part? So I'm going to go to my production tracking, and I'm just going to type in a part number. I could also type in a customer name or any sort of production order information. I've typed in 9833, which is our item here. And I can see that currently I have one on a water jet, one that's available from the fiber laser. So that means that it's likely en route to its next operation, if there is one. Once it's received at that next operation, it would change from fiber laser to, let's say, bending. I can see that we have some in the actual workshop, and then that we are still nesting and not started yet on the others. So these can be in different jobs. They could be for the same or different customers. And I can see that the delivery dates vary here, and some of which I'm going to be close to not making, and then not making at all. So this is based on the amount of other work that's going on in the shop, but also the entire routing of the part. So maybe we want to take a look at that quickly, just to see. When we look at our sheet parts, for example, these are parts that are in the system, in the database of Lantek. And how these parts get here can be a variety of ways. We can import them directly here with this interface. We could draw them in our CAD/CAM system. We could import them from other databases, but we could also import them from 3D CAD systems. So for example, SolidWorks, Creo, etc., Inventor. When we import the parts from the CAD system, I should say when they're exported from the 3D CAD system into Lantek, they appear in the Lantek database automatically. And so if that production order orders the part and it's already in the database, things will proceed as usual. If the part has not yet been saved to the database, the production order will still come into the system, and it'll put a big X on it, letting you know that your geometry has not yet arrived from the CAD/CAM tool. Once these parts are in the system, there's a variety of things that we can bring over associated to the parts, depending on how you bring them in. For example, we can bring in full assemblies from a 3D CAD system. We can maintain, not only the image, but also all of the pieces, whether they be common items that are non-cut that you purchase, or DXF files, and they can include sub-assemblies. So this process takes place automatically, very similar to deriving the material thickness, or potentially, your part routing if you have that in your 3D CAD system. Otherwise, the routings that you have possible in your shop can be set up as default routings. These are basically a direct sale. I'm selling a piece of material, just going to the laser. This one is for fiber laser and bending. And I can apply these routings from the production order. I can apply them directly to the part, or I can apply them manually. So if I'm looking at my parts here and I want to select a part, I can say that I want to assign a new routing, and I can select one of those just by hand. So we'll just say laser and bending. Click OK. We have different ways of assessing the times for non-cut operations through various means. We can count bend lines. We have ways of looking at the area of the part. So we work with each of our customers similar to find out what they're doing now to quote those things and to get those times, and we help implement that in the system. We also have the work centers defined. The work centers are a big part of this, as we discussed. The post processors that Lantek makes, usually with the very enhanced tables of technology, the knowledge of how long this is going to take to cut, those all come from the Lantek post processor. And those, we have some that are within 5%, which is very accurate for quoting. We also can import costs from your ERP system, or we can you can just have an estimated cost here, depending on where the costs are most important to you. You can have scrap reasons that can be tracked by the system, and also calendars for when those specific machine tools are available. If there are any downtime, those can be tracked as well. We can throw exceptions on what the availability is. So going back to kind of the other production tracking, good things about the production tracking is being able to let a customer know that maybe we're going to be on time or not on time. So we can go in and we can quick filter just by right-clicking to find a customer's name. We can also do reports for basically what is our required production and when is it possible to do certain things. So we'll be able to see here what we have pending, what we have in programming, what's available, and what's in the workshop. Just a variety of different graphs that you can pull together in quick reports. And then all of our reports can be exported into formats that make sense, whether it be an Excel file or a PDF or a Word document. And you'll see those throughout the system. Also, if you recall, when we typed in the part number here, we just used what is very similar to a Google search window. But we also have very specific filters that you can design for yourself, or use the filter box to, on the fly, create a way to search for information. One thing that is also important for the system is what we call tasks. Tasks are able to be assigned to a part or to a person. They can also be assigned to a production order number or production order itself. And here you can see that I have these parts are completed for the customer, and it's a notification that somebody sent me. But I also need to QA a part before delivery. And to find out the part, I don't have to go searching for sheet part 0067. I can simply click right there on part 67. From there, I can also see, I could send this to manufacturing if I want, create a one-off part. I could edit the routing to change it to maybe include the quality assurance process. I can also navigate to any other production orders for this part that have ever taken place. In this case, I picked one that was just the one, but anytime a production order has been related to this part, I would see it here in this breakdown. Any of the Lantek products that you have for the CAD/CAM side will be available right here on the left-hand side in our navigation pane. So whether you're using our Expert CAD/CAM or our 3D tubes software applications. And then if you ever wanted to run the synchronization with your ERP system, assuming you have the permissions to do that, you can also manually launch the integration process. So if you needed something right away, this can happen in the case of a scrapped part when our customers want it to go through the full reporting to the ERP system rather than being, rerouted to start right at as soon as the scrap occurs. If it needs to go through the ERP system, you can use this to push the results into the ERP and to accept the production order again. The production orders are unique, so you wouldn't be able to send the same production order number from the ERP system multiple times, so it doesn't matter how many times you run the synchronization, it will not overwrite the production order. And it's the same for the information going back. When the information goes back, we use this as the unique identifier for that. Other ways to get information about the parts or actually to get part data into Lantek is to go into the imports process that we have. So not just from a CAD system, but we can import sheet metal parts from a variety of formats. And one that's been pretty important lately has been through PDF files. A lot of our customers, especially fabricators, will only get a PDF file from a customer, and they, in order to quote that, need to be able to bring in the PDF file quickly without spending a lot of time, drawing and redrawing the part. So with Lantek, you can import a PDF file. You'll see here this kind of a quick visualization of it, and I just picked a simple one. And you can give that, it's going to have the reference of whatever you brought it in as, but you can give it a name, just like any other part coming into the system. You could also assign, the machine and the material thickness here as a one-off, kind of quoting process. And initially what's going to happen is it's going to basically just bring in the entire PDF file itself. So you're going to be able to still see the title block and everything that's part of this. But if I go into our drawing mode, we have a tool that will allow us to basically quickly grab the pertinent geometry and avoid all of these other drawing block details. And that's called our Detect Part tool. And by just clicking on any piece of the outside geometry, I'm able to bring in the part's geometry itself. If I wanted to modify the geometry, I could. And I can also go in and actually change any of the types of cutting process if we maybe had some bend lines in here, or give it a scale factor. In this case, it'll use dimensions to scale the part. And we just click OK. So now that I've created that part, the system can order it, or I could just simply see, what is that part going to cost to make? As soon as I assign it a machine tool, which I did, the fiber laser, I'll be getting a cost and an estimated time for this. And that cost is going to be the material that I've selected. It's going to be, depending on my settings, it could be a rectangle drawn around the part, or it could just be the outward geometry of the part, external geometry of the part with some sort of a buffer. But this gives you an idea of how you can know what this cost for this part is going to be with very little interaction for getting to the quote. I can even assign it like we did before, I can assign a new routing. I could take our laser bend, weld, and ship here. And I can put in or have calculated the estimated times for these. So if I feel like I know the estimated time, or I'm set to estimate this time, or again, I can rely on the system to know based on the rules that I've set what that time is going to be. So now oops, I didn't delete my old routing. So now that we've basically gone in and saved that, you would have the new routing with this part, like I showed you before. So I guess the other things that you can look at here would be the materials. These are all able to be referenced from the CAD systems, and then also the work centers, as we've talked about. We can go into work center configurations, and that's kind of the under the hood area of where Lantek gets its data. So it's going to be in the technology files, the lead-ins and lead-outs, common cutting parameters, and material thickness dependent data that's relevant by this material thickness and type. These materials can be aliased, so if you have 50 different versions of hot rolled that all cut pretty much the same, you don't have to put them all in here. We can import these, and with a lot of the machine tools, the OEMs of those machine tools actually help us to collect this data for you so that your times are as accurate as possible. In the case where you may have a part that is where you want something very specific on that part where you do not want it to be automated, for example, sometimes customers will want to have specific lead-ins or lead-outs. We are able to draw that at the part level, saving it with the part, and have that part nested with other parts that do not have those things set manually. So micro joints, tabs, lead-ins, lead-outs, things of that nature. So you can save those all at the part level, as you can different rotation parameters. And again, we can assign tasks to any number of users like we do here for the QA of this part. One final thing that before we take a few questions, because I can see that there's a lot of questions lined up here, is one other thing to consider with the system is how the users access the system. And so in this case, I'm going to go into the setup as a systems administrator and show you a little bit about how we have users, teams, and roles, and that they have different permissions. So users are the individual user. You can be part of a team. Maybe I'm on the team of programmers, and then maybe the role of programming itself is a role. So each of these can have different levels of rights and different members. In this case, these are all the administrators on our account. They can have different permissions groups and different security levels. So we often get the question of, how many people can we have on the system? It's as much as the computer memory that you have can hold, but the licenses are based on the number of people using the system at the same time. Since CAD/CAM licenses are different from the actual manager interface, we have a lot of the information that you can get as somebody just browsing the system, and to maintain that visibility without having to use the actual CAD/CAM tools and taking that license. And then finally, with the integration to different ERP systems, you access Manager directly from the login, and it is doing all the access to the ERP systems in the background and to the CAD/CAM systems. So you're not consuming licenses of your ERP system. This is just happening on an ongoing basis where this data is being brought in. The information that can be sent out with the conclusion of the part when the parts are validated, and I think maybe we took a quick look at that. Let's find something validated, but whenever you validate a part, and I'll just go ahead and say quick validate, assuming this cut on time, and again, I'm not in a real workshop, but the information that's available with this nest or this the parts on this nest to go back and forth are basically for each part, how much material did it consume, what specific material did it consume, how long did that take, and what scrap was there. So I think at this point, because we could go into a lot of other details, and of course we could spend time in nesting and whatnot, I will take a few questions and try to give you some more direct answers.
All right, thank you, Adria. That was awesome. We do have a couple questions that came in. So in regards to the workload monitoring function, one question that we had, is this in addition to logging into Work Center for the ERP?
Okay, so no, you would not have to log in to the Work Center specifically to monitor what's happening here. The workload monitoring of what's going on to that machine is going to come in those synchronizations with the ERP. You may have it every minute or every hour, every day. Those production orders are going to reside now in the Lantek database until which time they're either updated by the ERP or completed. And then you can see this information without being logged into the actual Work Center in the shop. So you don't have to be at the laser or logged into one of the shop floor tools.
Okay. Another question we have, this particular person deals a lot with assemblies. How easy is it, or can you pull assemblies into Manager?
That's a great question. You can actually create assemblies within Manager. So if you don't have a 3D CAD system and you want to create kits or assemblies to keep components together, you can do that by bringing the parts, the individual sheet metal parts, into the system, and then you can actually select which parts belong to your assembly that you're creating, and they will all be part now of this top level component, and we can give it a name. We can also bring those in, as I touched on a little bit before, from the 3D CAD systems. And in those cases, whether they're the top level assembly, all the individual parts, whether or not they're cut, whether they're something that you purchase, those can all come in as well. And when those are imported, you can, for example, on this cabinet assembly, you can keep pictures of them, and you can see the parts that are involved. And each of these parts can have its individual routing. You can see a full bill of materials, what material is going to be required, and then what the manufacturing costs are associated with it, just by bringing it into the system. And of course, you can actually produce it too. You can just send it to manufacturing just by clicking this button. And then any routing that you would like to change, if so, you can select from here. So that's a good question.
Okay, cool. And kind of keeping on that conversation of routing, another question we had: when my routing changes, how do I control who or what work center gets notified? And I think this may go back to kind of your permissions and roles and all of that.
Yes, so if you would like for them to be notified in a task, you could have a task go out to anybody that's associated with that work center. Here you can see one that just came through for work center maintenance. You could see that there's been a routing change or a new part change. But typically how things will work is that once you've assigned the routing or changed it to a different routing, whoever is the operator for this work center will see the nest come through, the CNC part come through. That's through our WAS interface, which is, again, my password's going to expire, which is, again, an interface that's out on the shop floor, and not something you can really demo here. But they'll be able to see a list of all of the upcoming CNCs, or in this case LST files, that they have to work on, the nests, and they can look at those and see those in the background while they're recording the time for what they're working on at present. And they can also chat back and forth with the actual programmer, and they're completely connected through this interface to this side of things. So they'll be able to see that they have work to do, and when that work changes, the next thing they see will be whatever's been sent to them.
Awesome. Looks like we have two more questions here before we wrap things up. The next one we have: if a part ends up being scrapped, how quickly can it be put back into production?
So that's a good question as well. That's based on your rules. Like I was hinting at before, if it's a requirement that your ERP system be notified of that scrap, as soon as the scrapping takes place, we can send a notification to the ERP system through the next synchronization, and then once we receive that production order back from the ERP system, have it be the next part, the hottest part. And then you can also go into the system and just simply move. So for example, if it was scrapped at bending, you can go back to the cut process and have it be on the next nest of that material type and thickness, just by releasing it back to where it started or to where it was scrapped.
All right, perfect. And our last question for today: so if you have to change a lead-in while in Manager, does it change the technology in the database, or just for this production order or nest?
That's a really good question. So it's important to remember that the parts that are in the system are the way they are the moment they're imported and saved to the database. And this could be with a specific type of lead in or lead out, or a material type and thickness in a work center. Once a production order is generated for that part, assuming that you want this to happen, you can change just for that production order anything about that part. So for example, I'm going to see that my lead-ins are very specific and that I should leave those there, but maybe I'm able to change micro joints, or maybe I'm able to change the work center. When I do that, it's only changing it for that production order itself. It's not changing the original in the database as it was stored. To change the part in the database, you would simply go to the part, pull it up, make the changes there, but you wouldn't want to make it in the production order. So that's a good question. You do end up with both versions of those, so you're not always changing the definition of your part.
All right, great. It looks like that takes care of all the questions that we had asked throughout our webinar and online demo today. So before we get out of here, I want to thank everybody for joining us today and just remind you that this is recorded. I'm going to go ahead and finish up some edits on it and get this sent out in an email version, if not tomorrow, then by Monday. So keep your eyes peeled. If you have any further questions that may be a little more specific to your operations, feel free to give us an email at info.usa@lanteksms.com or call us at 877-805-1028. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today and keep your eyes peeled for the email.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Adria.